Imagine lying in your own bed, pretending to be dying, while listening to the people you've loved your entire life argue over who gets your car keys. That's exactly what happened to Ezzy Williams, a man who thought he knew his family until he decided to test them in the most shocking way possible. A 72-year-old man sitting alone in his marble-floored mansion, surrounded by everything money could buy, yet feeling completely empty inside. The golden picture frames on his mahogany desk held smiling faces of his wife and 4 children, but as Ezzy stared at those photos that evening, a chilling question crept into his mind. If I lost everything tomorrow, who would still be here? You see, Ezzy Williams wasn't just rich, he was the kind of wealthy that makes people whisper when he walks by. His empire stretched across the city like tentacles of success. 3 luxury hotels that never had empty rooms, a construction company that built half the skyscrapers downtown, real estate properties scattered across 5 states, and a fleet of cars that could make a celebrity jealous. His bank account had so many zeros that even his accountant needed a calculator to count them. But wealth, as Ezzy was about to discover, can be the loneliest prison of all. That evening, something happened that would change everything. Ezzy had just finished a phone call with his lawyer about expanding his business when he noticed something that froze his blood. His wife, Margaret, was in the hallway talking to their eldest son, Emeka, and he could hear every word through his slightly open door. "Your father is getting old, you know," Margaret was saying, her voice carrying that tone people use when they think they're being careful. "We need to start thinking about the future, about what happens to all of this." Emeka's response hit like a punch to the gut. "Mom, he's been talking about updating his will for months. What if he gives everything to charity or something crazy like that? We need to make sure we're protected." "Don't worry," Margaret replied, and Ezzy could almost see her waving her hand dismissively. "I know how to handle your father. I've been doing it for 35 years. They were talking about him like he was already dead, like he was just an obstacle standing between them and his money." Ezzy's hands trembled as he closed the door quietly. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. These were the people he'd worked 18-hour days for, the people he'd sacrificed his youth for, the people he'd built an empire to secure, and they were already dividing up his legacy while he was still breathing. That's when the idea hit him, an idea so twisted, so desperate, yet so brilliant that it would either destroy his family or reveal their true hearts. What if he pretended to be dying? The thought should have horrified him, but instead it felt like the only way to get real answers. He'd spent decades wondering if his family loved him or his money. Now he could find out for certain. The next morning, Ezzy began the most elaborate and heartbreaking performance of his life. It started small. He began walking slower, sitting down more often, complaining about headaches. Within a week, he was holding his chest dramatically and claiming he felt dizzy. Margaret barely looked up from her phone when he mentioned feeling unwell. "You're just getting old, honey," she said, not even pausing her social media scrolling. "Maybe you should see Dr. Peterson." So he did, but not for the reasons she thought. Dr. Peterson had been the family physician for 15 years, and Ezzy trusted him completely. In the privacy of the doctor's office, Ezzy revealed his plan. "Doctor, I need your help with something unusual," Ezzy began, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I want to fake a terminal illness." Dr. Peterson nearly dropped his stethoscope. "Ezzy, what are you talking about?" "I need to know who really loves me," Ezzy explained. And then he told the doctor everything, the conversation he'd overheard, the looks he'd been noticing, the way his family treated the household staff better than they treated him. After an hour of discussion, Dr. Peterson agreed to help, but only because he'd witnessed the family's behavior himself during previous visits. "I'll give you 3 months," he said solemnly, "but after that, we stop this charade. The stress could actually make you sick." The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer, stage 4, 6 months to live, maybe less. Dr. Peterson delivered the news to the family on a Tuesday afternoon in his sterile white office. Eze sat in the chair looking appropriately devastated while his family surrounded him. The doctor's words hung in the air like a death sentence. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing more we can do. You should prepare yourselves." What happened next would haunt Eze for the rest of his life. Margaret gasped and covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, Eze felt guilty about his deception. His wife was crying for him, mourning the loss of their life together. But then she spoke. "How long did you say he has, doctor?" 6 months, possibly less." Margaret nodded slowly, wiping her tears. But Eze noticed something that made his stomach turn. She wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at Emeka, and they were exchanging a glance that spoke volumes. The ride home was silent except for Margaret's occasional sniffles. But that evening, Eze heard sounds coming from the study downstairs. Curious and suspicious, he crept to the top of the stairs and listened. His 3 oldest children, Emeka, Chike, and Cynthia, were huddled around his desk with Margaret, and they had papers spread everywhere. "The hotels alone are worth 12 million, Emeka was saying, his voice excited despite trying to whisper. "Don't forget the properties in Lagos," Cynthia added. "Those have tripled in value since he bought them." "We need to move fast," Margaret said, and her voice was all business now, no tears in sight. 6 months isn't much time to get everything in order. Chike, his middle son, was holding what looked like insurance documents. "The life insurance policy is for 5 million. That goes directly to Mom." "What about Rose?" Cynthia asked, referring to their youngest sister who was away at university. "Rose is still in school," Margaret replied dismissively. "She doesn't need to worry about these things yet." Eze gripped the banister so hard his knuckles went white. They were planning his financial funeral before his actual funeral. These people who he'd given everything to were treating his death like winning the lottery. But the worst was yet to come. Over the next few weeks, as Eze's condition worsened, his family's true colors emerged like a slow-developing photograph, revealing its horrible image. Margaret started redecorating the house, claiming she needed to prepare for the future. She sold his favorite armchair, the one his own father had given him, because it brought back too many memories. She threw away his collection of vintage books, saying they were taking up too much space. Emeka took over the construction company, telling clients that his father was too sick to work. But instead of maintaining Eze's careful business practices, he immediately started cutting corners to increase profits. Chike, his middle son, was holding what looked like insurance documents. "The life insurance policy is for 5 million. That goes directly to Mom." "What about Rose?" Cynthia asked, referring to their youngest sister who was away at university. "Rose is still in school," Margaret replied dismissively. "She doesn't need to worry about these things yet." Eze gripped the banister so hard his knuckles went white. They were planning his financial funeral before his actual funeral. These people who he'd given everything to were treating his death like winning the lottery. But the worst was yet to come. Over the next few weeks, as Ize's condition worsened, his family's true colors emerged like a slow-developing photograph, revealing its horrible image. Margaret started redecorating the house, claiming she needed to prepare for the future. She sold his favorite armchair, the one his own father had given him, because it brought back too many memories. She threw away his collection of vintage books, saying they were taking up too much space. Emeka took over the construction company, telling clients that his father was too sick to work. But instead of maintaining Ize's careful business practices, he immediately started cutting corners to increase profits. Chike convinced Margaret to let him handle the hotel business, and within a month, he'd fired half the loyal staff who'd worked for Ize for decades, replacing them with cheaper, inexperienced workers. Cynthia, who had always been Ize's little princess, stopped visiting altogether. When she did come by, she spent more time looking through his jewelry collection than talking to him. But the most crushing betrayal came from Margaret herself. As Ize's health declined, Margaret hired a nurse to take care of him during the day while she was running errands. But Ize soon realized these errands involved meeting with lawyers and real estate agents. One evening, when she thought he was sleeping, Margaret was on the phone with someone, and what Ize heard broke his heart into a million pieces. "No, James," she was saying, and her voice was lighter than it had been in months. "I can't go out with you yet. People would talk, but after the funeral, yes, we can be together then." James. Ize remembered him, Margaret's old boyfriend from college who had reconnected with her on social media a few years back. Margaret had assured Ize it was just an innocent friendship. But now he understood. She wasn't just waiting for him to die, she was planning her new life. As his condition supposedly worsened, the family visits became shorter and more impersonal. They'd stick their heads in his room, ask how he was feeling, and disappear again. No one sat with him, no one held his hand, no one asked about his fears or tried to comfort him. They were all too busy dividing up his life. The only person who seemed genuinely concerned was Rose, their youngest daughter. She was in her final year at university, studying to become a teacher, and she called every day from school. "Dad, how are you feeling today?" she'd ask, and unlike the others, she actually waited for an answer. "I'm managing, sweetheart," Eze would reply, and he could hear the worry in her voice when she responded. "Dad, I want to come home. I can finish my degree later. You need family with you right now." "No, Rose," Eze insisted. "Your education is important. I'll be fine." But Rose's concern was eating at him. She was the only one who seemed to actually love him, and he was lying to her, just like he was lying to the others. The guilt was becoming unbearable. Then came the day that changed everything. Eze woke up one morning to the sound of voices downstairs, loud, angry voices. He struggled out of bed. He'd gotten so good at acting weak that sometimes he actually felt weak and made his way to the top of the stairs. Emeka and Chike were in a heated argument about the business. Apparently, Emeka had made a decision about selling one of the hotels without consulting Chike, and now they were fighting over who had more authority. "Dad left me in charge of the construction company," Emeka was shouting. "But Mom said I could handle the hotels," Chike shot back. "You're both being ridiculous," Cynthia's voice cut through. "We should sell everything and split the money equally." "What about Rose?" Margaret asked, but her tone suggested she was asking out of obligation, not concern. "Rose is young," Emeka replied. "She'll inherit whatever's left after we take care of the important things." Whatever's left? Like Rose was an afterthought? Like the daughter who called every day to check on her dying father deserved only scraps. That's when Eze made a decision that would shock everyone. He called Rose that afternoon. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice genuinely weak now from emotional exhaustion. "I need you to come home." "Dad, what's wrong? You sound terrible." I need my little girl with me." Rose was on a bus home within hours. She arrived that evening with a suitcase and a heart full of love that made Eze want to cry real tears. The moment she walked into his room, the difference was like night and day. While the others had been treating him like an inconvenience, Rose treated him like her beloved father. "Dad, have you been eating enough?" she asked, examining his face with concern. "You look so thin." She spent the next hour reorganizing his medications, fluffing his pillows, and making sure he had fresh water. She sat beside his bed and held his hand while she told him about school, her dreams of teaching, and how much she'd missed him. "Rose," Margaret called from downstairs, "come help me with dinner." "In a minute, Mom," Rose called back. "I'm spending time with Dad." That small act of defiance, choosing her father over a chore, spoke volumes. Over the next few weeks, Rose became Eze's constant companion. While the others continued their planning and scheming, Rose moved into the guest room next to his so she could hear if he needed anything during the night. She read to him from his favorite books, the ones Margaret had thrown away, which Rose had secretly rescued from the trash. She brought him home-cooked meals because she noticed he wasn't eating the food the others prepared. She helped him walk around the garden when he claimed he needed fresh air. But most importantly, she talked to him, really talked to him. "Dad," she said one evening as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset, "I want you to know that you've been the best father anyone could ask for. Even when you were working all the time, I knew you were doing it for us. I knew you loved us." Those words hit Eze like a physical blow. Here was his youngest daughter, comforting him in what she believed were his final days, while his other children were downstairs arguing over his assets. "Rose," he said carefully, "what do you think will happen to the family after I'm gone?" Rose was quiet for a long moment. "I think we'll miss you terribly," she said finally, "and I hope the others remember what you taught us about family being more important than anything else." "What if they don't?" Rose squeezed his hand. "Then I'll have to carry on your legacy by myself. But that's okay. You taught me how to love unconditionally. That's worth more than any inheritance." Eze had to excuse himself to go to the bathroom because he couldn't let Rose see the tears in his eyes. His test was revealing everything he'd feared, but it was also showing him something beautiful. He had raised at least one child who understood what really mattered in life. But the situation was about to get much worse before it got better. 2 months into his illness, Eze overheard a conversation that made him realize just how far his family was willing to go. Margaret was on the phone with someone and she was discussing moving him to a care facility. "He's becoming too much work," she was saying. "Rose is exhausting herself trying to take care of him, and we have so much to manage right now. There's a nice place about an hour away. It would be better for everyone." A care facility? They wanted to ship him off to die among strangers so they could focus on dividing up his money without the inconvenience of his presence. When Rose found out about the plan, she exploded. "You want to put Dad in a nursing home?" she screamed at Margaret. And Eze had never heard his gentle daughter raise her voice like that. "He's not dying among strangers. I won't let you do that to him." "Rose, be reasonable," Emeka said, trying to sound like the responsible older brother. "We can't provide the level of care he needs here." "I can," Rose shot back. "I've been taking care of him just fine." "You're 22 years old," Cynthia added. "You should be out living your life, not playing nurse to a dying old man." The words "dying old man" coming from his own daughter felt like a knife to Ize's heart. "That dying old man is our father," Rose screamed, and now she was crying. "How can you talk about him like that? How can you be so cold?" "We're being practical," Margaret said firmly. "This is what's best for everyone." But Rose wasn't backing down. "If you move Dad to a nursing home, I'm going with him. I'll drop out of school, I'll get a job nearby, and I'll visit him every single day until the end." The room went silent. Even from upstairs, Ize could feel the weight of that declaration. "Don't be dramatic," finally said. "I'm not being dramatic, I'm being loyal, something the rest of you seem to have forgotten how to be." That night, Rose came to Ize's room with red, swollen eyes. "Dad," she said, sitting on the edge of his bed, "I won't let them put you in a home. I promise you that." "Rose, sweetheart, maybe they're right. Maybe it would be better for you if—" "No," her voice was firm. "I don't care what's better for me. I care about what's right. And what's right is staying with your family when they need you most." She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Dad, I know you're scared. I know you're in pain. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, you won't be alone. I'll be right here with you until the very end." Ize felt like his heart was going to explode. This beautiful, loyal, loving young woman was willing to sacrifice her future to stay by his side. Meanwhile, her siblings were fighting over his money, and her mother was planning her next romance. The contrast was so stark, so painful, that Ize almost broke character right then and there. He wanted to sit up, grab Rose's hands, and tell her the truth. He wanted to tell her that he wasn't dying, that this was all a test, that she had passed with flying colors while the others had failed miserably. But he couldn't, not yet, because as much as the truth was killing him, he needed to see how far the others would go. He needed to know beyond any doubt who his real family was. The breaking point came a week later. Rose had convinced the family not to move Ize to a nursing home, but the atmosphere in the house had become toxic. The others barely spoke to Rose, treating her like she was being unreasonable for wanting to care for her dying father. Meanwhile, their planning had reached a fever pitch. They were no longer even trying to hide their activities from Ize. Papers covered every surface in the house. Real estate agents came and went. Lawyers visited regularly. And through it all, Rose remained by Ize's side, reading to him, feeding him, helping him with the most basic and intimate tasks that family members should help with, tasks that the others found too unpleasant or inconvenient. One morning, Rose helped Ize to the bathroom and then assisted him back to bed. As she was adjusting his pillows, she noticed that he seemed particularly weak. "Dad, you're having a hard day today, aren't you?" Ize nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The emotional toll of his deception was becoming physically exhausting. "You know what?" Rose said suddenly, her face lighting up with an idea. "What if we went to the village to see Mama Nkechi?" Mama Nkechi was an old family friend who lived in Ize's ancestral village about 3 hours away. She was known throughout the region as a traditional healer, someone who knew about herbs and old remedies that modern medicine sometimes overlooked. "Rose, I don't think." "Dad, what if there's something the doctors don't know? What if Mama Nkechi has something that could help you?" Even if it doesn't cure you, maybe it could give you more time, or at least make you more comfortable." The hope in Rose's eyes was heartbreaking. She still believed she could save him. She was willing to try anything, explore every possibility, travel to the ends of the earth if it meant keeping her father alive a little longer. "We could go for just a few days," Rose continued, the words tumbling out in her excitement. "I could drive you there, and we could stay in Grandpa's old house. Remember how peaceful it was there. Maybe the change of scenery would do you good." Eze felt tears welling up in his eyes. His grandpa's house had been where Eze spent his happiest childhood memories. The idea of going there with Rose, of having some time away from the toxic atmosphere his other children had created, was incredibly appealing. But more than that, he realized this could be the final test. If he agreed to go to the village with Rose, how would the others react? Would they insist on coming along to support their dying father? Would they at least express concern about his traveling and his condition? Or would they be relieved to have him out of the way?
"Okay," Eze said softly. "Let's go to the village." Rose's face broke into the first genuine smile Eze had seen from anyone in months. She kissed his forehead and squeezed his hand. "I'll go tell the others and start packing," she said, already moving toward the door. Eze listened as Rose went downstairs to announce their plans. She heard her explaining to the family that she wanted to take him to see Mum and Kechi, that maybe traditional medicine could help where modern medicine had failed. The response was immediate and telling. "Rose, that's ridiculous," Emeka said. "Dad needs to be near his doctors, not in some village with a witch doctor." "She's not a witch doctor," Rose replied firmly. "She's a healer, and she's helped people before." "This is a waste of time," Cynthia added, "and it's dangerous for Dad to travel in his condition." But Margaret's response was the most revealing of all. "Actually," she said slowly, "maybe Rose is right. Maybe the village air would be good for your father. How long would you be gone?" "Just a week or two," Rose replied. "Long enough to see if Mum and Kechi can help." "That sounds fine," Margaret said, and Eze could hear the relief in her voice. "You take good care of your father. Not, we'll come with you. Not, we'll miss you. Not, call us every day to let us know how he's doing. Just take good care of your father." As if she was handing off a responsibility rather than saying goodbye to her dying husband. The next morning, Rose packed their bags while the others said their goodbyes. Each farewell felt like a formality, a duty to be checked off, rather than an emotional moment with a dying family member. Emeka shook his father's hand and said, "Take care, Dad. I'll handle everything here." Everything. The businesses, the properties, the money, everything that mattered to him. Chike gave him a quick hug and said, "Hope you feel better, Dad. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about the empire you spent your life building, because we're dismantling it while you're gone." Cynthia kissed his cheek and said, "Love you, Daddy. Enjoy the village. Enjoy dying away from home so we don't have to watch." And Margaret hugged him and whispered in his ear, "I'll always love you, Eze." But as she pulled away, Eze caught something in her eyes that looked disturbingly like goodbye. Not the temporary goodbye of a wife sending her husband on a trip, but the permanent goodbye of a woman who hoped she might not see him again. Only Rose's goodbye felt real. She cried as she helped him into the passenger seat of her small car, and she kept reaching over to squeeze his hand during the drive. "Dad, I know this might not work," she said as they drove through the countryside, "but I had to try. I can't give up on you. I won't give up on you." The 3-hour drive to the village was one of the most peaceful times Eze had experienced in months. Away from the tension and scheming of his house, with just Rose and the rolling hills outside his window, he almost forgot he was supposed to be dying. Rose chatted about memories from their childhood visits to the village, about her plans for teaching, about everything except his illness. For those 3 hours, they were just a father and daughter spending time together. When they arrived at his grandfather's old house, Rose immediately set about making it comfortable. She cleaned the rooms, aired out the bedding, and went to the local market to buy fresh food. She treated the whole thing like an adventure rather than a desperate last attempt to save her father's life. Mom and Ketchy arrived the next day, and Eze almost broke character when he saw her. She was ancient now, probably in her 90s, but her eyes were still sharp and knowing. She'd known Eze since he was a boy, and he was terrified she might see through his deception. But if she suspected anything, she didn't let on. She examined him thoroughly, asked about his symptoms, and listened to his heart with an old wooden stethoscope that had probably been treating villagers for decades. "This is very serious," she said finally, and Rose held her breath. "But I have seen worse cases recover. The city has made his spirit weak. Here in the village, surrounded by the love of his ancestors and his devoted daughter, his spirit can grow strong again." She prepared various herbal mixtures for him to drink and gave Rose detailed instructions about his care. But more than the medicines, Mom and Ketchy's presence seemed to give Rose hope, and that hope was infectious. For the first time in months, Rose laughed. She sang while she cooked. She told stories in the evenings about her university friends. She seemed lighter, happier, more like the young woman she was supposed to be. And as Eze watched his daughter flourish in this simple village setting, taking care of him without complaint, choosing his company over everything else in her life, he realized something that broke his heart all over again. Rose wasn't just passing his test, she was failing his test. Because the test was supposed to reveal his family's true nature, and what it was revealing about Rose was that she was too good, too loving, too loyal for her own good. She was sacrificing her youth, her education, her future to care for someone she believed was dying. She was giving up everything for him, while her siblings were fighting over everything he'd worked for. And that's when Eze realized his test had gone too far. On their 5th night in the village, as Rose helped him prepare for bed, she said something that shattered what was left of his resolve. "Dad, I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft in the lamplight. After you're gone, I don't think I want to go back to the city. I think I want to stay here in the village and teach the children here. It feels like this is where I belong, where you would want me to be." She was planning to stay in the village after his death. She was going to abandon her dreams of teaching in the city, her plans for the future, everything she'd worked for, because being here made her feel closer to him. "Rose, no," Eze said, sitting up straighter than he had in months. "You have to go back to school. You have to finish your degree." "Dad, what's the point? After you're gone, what does any of it matter? My degree, my career, any of it. What good is success if I don't have family to share it with?" "You have family. You have your mother and your brothers and sister." Rose was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, I love them, but they're not like us. They don't understand what family really means. They see dollar signs where I see people. They think about what they can get where I think about what I can give." She took his hand in both of hers. "You taught me that love isn't about what someone can do for you. It's about what you're willing to do for them. And I'm willing to do anything for you. Even if that means spending your last days in a village instead of the fancy hospital they wanted to send you to. Even if that means giving up my old dreams to honor your memory in a place that made you happy. Eze couldn't take it anymore. The words came out before he could stop them. Rose, I have something to tell you. But before he could continue, Rose's phone rang. She glanced at it and frowned. It's Mom, she said. She never calls this late. Rose answered the phone, and immediately Eze could hear Margaret's voice, high-pitched and panicked. Rose, thank God you answered. We need you to come home right away. Mom, what's wrong? What happened? It's the business, Rose. Everything's falling apart. The hotel Chike was managing had a kitchen fire, and now there's an insurance investigation. Emeka made some bad decisions with the construction company, and we might lose the government contract. We need your father's signature on some papers, and we need it now. Rose looked at Eze with concern. Mom, Dad is very sick. I don't think he should be worrying about business right now. Rose, if we don't handle this, there won't be anything left for any of us. Please just bring him home for one day so he can sign the papers, and then you can go back to the village. Mom, Rose, please, we're going to lose everything. Everything. Not we're going to lose Dad, or we miss you both, or we're worried about Dad's health. Just we're going to lose everything. Meaning the money. Rose hung up the phone and looked at Eze with tortured eyes. Dad, they need us to come home. There are some problems with the businesses. Eze felt a cold rage building in his chest. Even now, even believing he was dying, his other children couldn't leave him in peace. They'd let Rose take him to the village because it was convenient for them. But the moment they needed something from him, they demanded his return. What do you want to do? Rose asked gently. And that's when Eze made his decision. I want to go home, he said, but not for the reasons they think. The drive back to the city the next morning was tense and silent. Rose kept glancing at him with worry, probably thinking the stress of the business problems was making his condition worse. If only she knew. When they arrived at the house, chaos greeted them. Papers were scattered everywhere, phones were ringing constantly, and his 3 older children were running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Margaret rushed to the car as soon as they pulled into the driveway. Eze, thank God you're home. We need you to sign these papers immediately. Not, how are you feeling, or I missed you, or I'm glad you're back safely. Just, we need you to sign papers. As Rose helped him out of the car, Emeka appeared with a stack of documents. Dad, I know you're not feeling well, but this is really important. The insurance company is saying the fire might have been caused by negligence, and if we don't respond properly, they won't pay out. We could lose millions. Chike came running out of the house with his own set of papers. Dad, forget the insurance thing for a minute. We have a bigger problem. The city is threatening to cancel our construction contract because of some permits I forgot to renew. I need your signature to fix it. Cynthia appeared with her own crisis. Daddy, I know everyone else has problems, but I need you to sign this paper too. It's about the property taxes on the rental houses. If we don't pay them by tomorrow, the city will start seizure proceedings.
Rose stood beside the car, watching her family swarm around their dying father with paperwork, and Eze could see the disgust and heartbreak in her eyes. "Stop it!" Rose shouted suddenly, and her voice cut through all the chaos. "All of you, just stop it!" Everyone turned to look at her. Dad just got out of the car after a 3-hour drive. He's sick, he's exhausted, and the first thing you do is attack him with papers to sign? Rose, you don't understand, Emeka started. No, you don't understand. Rose's voice was shaking with emotion.
Dad is dying. Do you hear me? He's dying. And all you care about is your stupid businesses and your money?" She gestured wildly at the papers in their hands. "Where were you when he was throwing up every morning? Where were you when he couldn't sleep because of the pain? Where were you when he needed help getting to the bathroom?" The family stood silent, the papers suddenly feeling heavy in their hands. "I'll tell you where you were," Rose continued, tears streaming down her face. "You were in the study, dividing up his assets. You were meeting with lawyers and real estate agents. You were planning your lives after he's gone." "Rose, that's not fair," Margaret started. "It's completely fair," Rose shot back. "You sent us to the village because it was convenient for you. You didn't care if traditional medicine could help, Dad. You just wanted us out of the way so you could handle your business without the inconvenience of caring for a dying man." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and looked at each of them with disappointment that cut deeper than anger. "You know what the saddest part is? Dad built all of this for you. Every hotel, every building, every dollar, and every account, he earned it for his family. And now that he needs his family, you're too busy fighting over his legacy to actually be with him." The silence that followed was deafening. And in that moment, watching his youngest daughter defend him against his own family, watching her stand up for love against greed, watching her choose loyalty over convenience, Aziz knew it was time to end the charade. But he also knew he couldn't end it quietly. "Rose is right," Aziz said, and his voice was stronger than it had been in months. Everyone turned to look at him, and they were surprised to see him standing straighter, looking more alert than he had since his diagnosis. "Rose is absolutely right about everything," he continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "And I think it's time you all learn the truth." "Dad, what are you talking about?" Emeka asked, confusion replacing urgency on his face. Aziz looked at each of them, Margaret, Emeka, Chike, Cynthia, and finally Rose, and took a deep breath. "I'm not dying." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "What?" Margaret whispered. "I'm not sick. I never was sick. Dr. Peterson helped me fake the diagnosis." Rose's face went white. "Dad, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that for the past 3 months, I've been testing all of you. I wanted to know who really loved me and who just loved my money." The explosion came from multiple directions at once. "You what?" Emeka screamed. "You faked cancer?" Cynthia shrieked. "You made us think you were dying?" Margaret's voice was a mixture of rage and disbelief. But Rose's reaction was different. She wasn't angry. She was devastated. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I dropped out of school for you. I spent 3 months taking care of you. I was planning to give up my entire future to stay in the village and honor your memory." The pain in her voice was like a physical blow to Aziz's chest. "Rose, sweetheart, I held your hand while you pretended to be in pain," she continued, tears flowing freely now. "I fed you, I bathed you, I cleaned up after you. I sat by your bed at night listening to make sure you were still breathing." She looked at him with a combination of hurt and betrayal that was worse than any anger. "I mourned you, Dad. I grieved for you every single day, thinking I was going to lose the most important person in my life, and it was all a lie?" "Rose, please let me explain." But Rose was backing away from him, shaking her head. "All those nights I stayed awake crying, thinking about how I would live without you. All those times I prayed and begged God to give you more time. All those moments I told you I loved you, thinking they might be the last. She wiped her eyes and looked at the rest of the family, who were still standing in shocked silence. "But you know what the really sick part is?" she said, her voice getting stronger. "Even though Dad lied to us, everything I said about the rest of you is still true." She turned back to Ezi. "Your test worked, Dad. You found out exactly what you wanted to know. They don't love you, they love your money. And I don't love your money, I love you. But apparently, that love made me the biggest fool of all." With that, Rose walked past all of them and into the house, leaving the family standing in the driveway in stunned silence. The aftermath was immediate and explosive. 3 months, Emeka shouted, his face red with rage. "You put us through 3 months of hell for what? To play some sick psychological game? Do you have any idea what you've done to the businesses?" Chike added, waving the papers frantically. "We made decisions based on thinking you were dying. We restructured everything." "I canceled my vacation to Europe," Cynthia screamed. "I turned down job opportunities because I thought you needed me." But it was Margaret's reaction that cut the deepest. 35 years, she said, her voice eerily calm. 35 years of marriage, and you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. You made me grieve for my husband. You made me plan for widowhood. You let me cry myself to sleep thinking I was going to lose you." She looked at him with something that might have been hate. "And for what, Ez? What did you accomplish with this cruel, manipulative stunt?" "I accomplished exactly what I set out to accomplish," Eze replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I found out who you really are." "We're your family," Emeka protested. "No," Eze said firmly. "Rose is my family. The rest of you are just people who happen to share my name and live in my house." He gestured toward the papers still clutched in their hands. "Look at yourselves right now. I just told you I'm not dying, that I'm healthy and alive and standing right here in front of you. And instead of being relieved or happy, you're angry about the business implications. Even now, even in this moment, it's still about the money." "That's not fair," Margaret protested. "Isn't it?" Eze challenged. "Margaret, in the 3 months you thought I was dying, how many nights did you sleep in our bed instead of the guest room? How many times did you sit with me just to talk? How many times did you tell me you loved me without it being a response to something I said first?" Margaret opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. "Emeka, you took over my construction company and immediately started cutting corners to increase profits. You fired people who had worked for me for 20 years. Is that what you thought I would want?" Emeka looked away. "Chike, you convinced your mother to let you handle the hotels, and within a month you'd fired half the staff and nearly burned one down because you weren't maintaining proper safety standards." Chike's face flushed with embarrassment. "And Cynthia, you stopped visiting altogether unless you needed something. The last time you came to my room, you spent the entire visit looking through my jewelry collection and asking which pieces were real antiques." Cynthia crossed her arms defensively. You were just appraising your inheritance while your father was supposedly dying in the next room." Eze looked at each of them, and his voice softened slightly. "I didn't want to believe it. For months, I told myself there had to be another explanation for your behavior. I convinced myself that maybe you were just dealing with grief in your own ways." He shook his head sadly. But then Rose came home from university, and the difference was like night and day. She didn't ask about the will. She didn't start making plans for after I was gone. She didn't try to take over the businesses or sell the properties. His voice grew stronger as he continued. "She sat with me. She talked to me. She held my hand when I was scared.
She read to me from the books you threw away. She cooked for me. She cleaned for me. She moved to the village with me because she thought it might help me get better. He looked toward the house where Rose had disappeared. Rose was willing to give up her education, her career, her entire future to take care of her dying father. Meanwhile, the rest of you were fighting over who got the bigger piece of the inheritance. The silence that followed was heavy with shame and realization. Finally, Margaret spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "So, what happens now, Ez? What was the point of all this if not to destroy our family?" "The family was already destroyed," Eze replied. "I just revealed it. But you're right about one thing. There is a point to all this." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "This is my real will, the one I had my lawyer draw up last week." He held it up so they could all see it. "Everything I own, every house, every car, every business, every bank account, every investment goes to Rose. All of it." The gasps were audible. "Dad, you can't be serious," Emeka said, his voice panicked. "I'm completely serious. Rose is the only one who proved she loves me more than she loves my money. So she's the only one who deserves to inherit it." "What about us?" Cynthia asked, her voice small and scared. "What about you? You'll get exactly what you gave me when you thought I was dying." "Nothing." Margaret stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her like she was begging. "Ez, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. We still love you." "Do you?" Eze asked. "Or do you love the lifestyle I provided, the security I gave you, the status that came with being my wife and children?" He gestured toward the house. "Prove it. Move out tomorrow. Get jobs. Support yourselves. Show me that you can love me without needing anything from me. And maybe we can talk about forgiveness." But even as he said it, Eze could see in their faces that they wouldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They had become so dependent on his wealth, so entitled to his support, that the idea of making it on their own was terrifying. "This is insane," Emeka said, his voice rising again. "You can't disinherit your entire family because of some twisted test." "I can, and I will," Eze replied firmly. "The papers are already filed. Rose inherits everything, and the rest of you inherit the consequences of your choices." He turned toward the house. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go apologize to the only person in this family who deserves an apology." Eze found Rose in her childhood bedroom, sitting on the edge of her bed with her head in her hands. She looked up when he knocked, and her eyes were red from crying. "Can I come in?" he asked. Rose nodded, but didn't speak. Eze sat down beside her on the bed, the same bed where he used to read her bedtime stories when she was little. "Rose, I owe you the biggest apology of my life." "You don't owe me anything, Dad," Rose said quietly. "You got what you wanted. You found out the truth about everyone. But I hurt you in the process. I hurt the one person who didn't deserve to be hurt." Rose was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you were lying there, pretending to be sick, and I was taking care of you, did any of it mean anything to you? Or was I just part of your experiment?" The question broke Eze's heart all over again. "Rose, sweetheart, every moment meant everything to me. Watching you care for me, seeing your kindness and your love, it wasn't part of the test. It was the most real thing I experienced during those 3 months." He took her hands in his. "The test was supposed to show me who loved me and who loved my money. But what it actually showed me was something I should have known all along. That I raised one perfect daughter who understands what love really means."
Rose's eyes filled with tears again. "I was so scared, Dad. I thought I was going to lose you. I thought every day might be our last day together." "I know, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I needed to know the truth about the others. And now you do." "Yes, now I do." They sat in silence for a moment, and then Rose asked the question Ize had been dreading. "What happens now, Dad? I heard you talking outside about the will." Ize sighed heavily. "Rose, I meant what I said. I'm leaving everything to you." "Dad, no." Rose shook her head firmly. "I don't want it." "What?" "I don't want the money. I don't want the businesses. I don't want any of it." Ize stared at her in shock. "Rose, it's millions of dollars. It's your future security." "Dad, I spent 3 months taking care of someone I thought was dying, and I never once thought about inheritance or money or security. I thought about love. I thought about family. I thought about making sure you weren't alone." She stood up and walked to the window. "The money didn't make Mom and the others love you more. If anything, it made them love you less because they started seeing you as a source of wealth instead of a person." She turned back to face him. "I don't want to become like them. I don't want to be corrupted by wealth the way they were." "Rose, you're not like them. You could never be like them." "Maybe not now, but money changes people, Dad. You've seen it happen." Rose sat back down beside him. "I want to go back to school. I want to finish my teaching degree. I want to work with children and make a difference in the world the way you taught me to." She took her hands again. "And I want you to give the others another chance." "Rose, after everything they did, they made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but they're still our family. And maybe if they have to work for your love instead of just expecting your money, they might remember what really matters." Ize looked at his youngest daughter with amazement and pride. "How did I get so lucky to have you as a daughter?" Rose smiled through her tears. "Because underneath all the wealth and the businesses and the complicated stuff, you're a good man who taught me the right values. You just forgot that for a while." Over the next few days, the family slowly began to process what had happened. The initial anger gave way to shame, and the shame gave way to a painful kind of self-reflection. Margaret moved into the guest room, not because Ize asked her to, but because she couldn't face sleeping next to a husband she had betrayed in her heart. She started going to therapy to try to understand how she had become someone who could plan a new life while her husband was supposedly dying. Emeka quit the construction company and got a job working for someone else, determined to prove he could succeed without his father's money. It was humbling and difficult, but for the first time in years, he felt proud of earning his own paycheck. Chike sold his expensive car and moved into a small apartment. He started working at a hotel, not owning one, just working at one, learning the business from the ground up the way his father had originally. Cynthia was the slowest to change. She raged and cried and threatened to never speak to Ize again. But eventually, she got a job at a non-profit organization and slowly began to understand the satisfaction that comes from helping others instead of just helping yourself. Rose went back to university to finish her degree, but she came home every weekend to spend time with Ize. Not because she felt obligated, but because she genuinely enjoyed his company. And Ize? Ize learned that the most valuable thing he had built wasn't his business empire. It was the relationship with the one child who had never needed his money to love him. 6 months later, Ize made a new will. He left some money to each of his children, Enough to give them security, but not enough to make them dependent. He left the bulk of his estate to various charities, particularly those focused on education and helping families in need. But to Rose, he left something more valuable than money. He left a letter that said, "My dearest Rose, you taught me that the richest man in the world is not the one with the most money, but the one with the most love. Thank you for showing me what real wealth looks like. It looks like a daughter who would sacrifice everything for her father, not because she has to, but because she wants to. You are my greatest achievement, my proudest accomplishment, and my most precious treasure. All my love, Dad."
Ize sat down beside her on the bed, the same bed where he used to read her bedtime stories when she was little. "Rose, I owe you the biggest apology of my life." "You don't owe me anything, Dad," Rose said quietly. "You got what you wanted. You found out the truth about everyone. But I hurt you in the process. I hurt the one person who didn't deserve to be hurt." Rose was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you were lying there, pretending to be sick, and I was taking care of you, did any of it mean anything to you? Or was I just part of your experiment?" The question broke Ize's heart all over again. "Rose, sweetheart, every moment meant everything to me. Watching you care for me, seeing your kindness and your love, it wasn't part of the test. It was the most real thing I experienced during those 3 months." He took her hands in his. "The test was supposed to show me who loved me and who loved my money. But what it actually showed me was something I should have known all along, that I raised one perfect daughter who understands what love really means." Rose's eyes filled with tears again. "I was so scared, Dad. I thought I was going to lose you. I thought every day might be our last day together." "I know, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I needed to know the truth about the others. And now you do." "Yes, now I do." They sat in silence for a moment, and then Rose asked the question Ize had been dreading. "What happens now, Dad? I heard you talking outside about the will." Ize sighed heavily. "Rose, I meant what I said. I'm leaving everything to you." "Dad, no." Rose shook her head firmly. "I don't want it." "What?" "I don't want the money. I don't want the businesses. I don't want any of it." Ize stared at her in shock. "Rose, it's millions of dollars. It's your future security." "Dad, I spent 3 months taking care of someone I thought was dying, and I never once thought about inheritance or money or security. I thought about love. I thought about family. I thought about making sure you weren't alone." She stood up and walked to the window. "The money didn't make Mom and the others love you more. If anything, it made them love you less because they started seeing you as a source of wealth instead of a person." She turned back to face him. "I don't want to become like them. I don't want to be corrupted by wealth the way they were." "Rose, you're not like them. You could never be like them. Maybe not now, but money changes people, Dad. You've seen it happen." Rose sat back down beside him. "I want to go back to school. I want to finish my teaching degree. I want to work with children and make a difference in the world the way you taught me to." She took her hands again. "And I want you to give the others another chance. Rose, after everything they did, they made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but they're still our family. And maybe if they have to work for your love instead of just expecting your money, they might remember what really matters."
Eze looked at his youngest daughter with amazement and pride. "How did I get so lucky to have you as a daughter?" Rose smiled through her tears. "Because underneath all the wealth and the businesses and the complicated stuff, you're a good man who taught me the right values. You just forgot that for a while." Over the next few days, the family slowly began to process what had happened. The initial anger gave way to shame, and the shame gave way to a painful kind of self-reflection. Margaret moved into the guest room, not because Eze asked her to, but because she couldn't face sleeping next to a husband she had betrayed in her heart. She started going to therapy to try to understand how she had become someone who could plan a new life while her husband was supposedly dying. Emeka quit the construction company and got a job working for someone else, determined to prove he could succeed without his father's money. It was humbling and difficult, but for the first time in years, he felt proud of earning his own paycheck. Chike sold his expensive car and moved into a small apartment. He started working at a hotel, not owning one, just working at one, learning the business from the ground up the way his father had originally. Cynthia was the slowest to change. She raged and cried and threatened to never speak to Eze again. But eventually, she got a job at a non-profit organization and slowly began to understand the satisfaction that comes from helping others instead of just helping yourself. Rose went back to university to finish her degree, but she came home every weekend to spend time with Eze. Not because she felt obligated, but because she genuinely enjoyed his company. And Eze? Eze learned that the most valuable thing he had built wasn't his business empire. It was the relationship with the one child who had never needed his money to love him. 6 months later, Eze made a new will. He left some money to each of his children, enough to give them security, but not enough to make them dependent. He left the bulk of his estate to various charities, particularly those focused on education and helping families in need. But to Rose, he left something more valuable than money. He left a letter that said, "My dearest Rose, you taught me that the richest man in the world is not the one with the most money, but the one with the most love. Thank you for showing me what real wealth looks like. It looks like a daughter who would sacrifice everything for her father, not because she has to, but because she wants to. You are my greatest achievement, my proudest accomplishment, and my most precious treasure. All my love, Dad."
Rose framed that letter and kept it on her desk throughout her teaching career. And whenever her students asked her what the most important lesson in life was, she would tell them about a rich man who pretended to be dying and learned that love is the only currency that really matters. The family never fully recovered from Eze's test. Some relationships were damaged beyond repair, while others were slowly rebuilt on more honest foundations. But they all learned something valuable, that you can't fake love, you can't buy loyalty, and you can't test genuine affection without risking everything. Most importantly, they learned that the people who truly love you will stay by your side not when you're successful and powerful, but when you're weak and vulnerable. They'll hold your hand in the darkness even when they think no one is watching. They'll sacrifice their own comfort for yours, not because they expect something in return, but because love is its own reward. And sometimes the smallest acts of genuine care are worth more than all the wealth in the world. As Rose often told her students in the years that followed, many people fear death, but sometimes you need to use it as a mirror to see true hearts. The question isn't who will cry at your funeral, it's who will hold your hand while you're still alive. The story of Eze Williams became a cautionary tale told throughout their community,
A reminder that money can buy many things, but it cannot buy the one thing that matters most, genuine love from the people who matter most to you. In the end, Ize's test revealed exactly what he had feared it would, that most of his family loved his wealth more than they loved him. But it also revealed something beautiful that he hadn't expected, that one person's unconditional love is worth more than 1,000 people's conditional affection, and that sometimes the most painful truth is also the most liberating one. If stories like this move you, don't forget to like this video, drop your comment below about what you think you would have done in Rose's situation, and subscribe to our channel for more real moments that matter. Because at the end of the day, we all need reminders about what truly counts in this life, and it's